welcome back. Happy New Year. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Office hours for 2021, January 7th. Thanks for joining us today. Thought I'd do something like an acid edition today. So I've got the DPO, a square wave. Let's break this down a little further here. The square wave is patched through the QPAS for some filtering. It's being sequenced by the Rene, which I've loaded up with the new firmware that we just released a week or two ago. And the beauty of this new firmware is in the glides, which cause gate ties whenever whenever a function is set to trigger. So we have on steps that are not gliding, we just have triggers. And if steps are gliding, then the gates will hold between the steps to create these slides, which are pretty key to the sound of a lot of acid house, acid techno. But also when running a square wave through a resonant filter. And what I have done as far as the QPAS setup goes, I'm using just the single low pass out because that's all four filters mixed together. I have the radiates turned down to get them the two sets pretty close to being the same value, and this is going to add to the aggressiveness of the filter. I also have the level set relatively low to about 1 o'clock because that also gives more room for the resonant peaks to come through, which is also kind of key to what people like about so-called acid music. And then finally, I've got the bandpass output patched to feed back the filter on the frequency input. So if I turn that up, I get a little extra crunch to it. Then we've got the tempi, which is clocking the Rene, is also creating a steady pulse to the maths, which is opening up the modulation with a triangle wave in it, and also hitting that VCO's expo input, and that's how we're getting this kick drum here. I'm inspired by Trovarsi's video from yesterday where she was doing some rhythmic modulation of the reverb for her Techno patch. And if you haven't checked that out, I definitely recommend heading back to our channel to check it out. Extended techniques with Trovarsi. Other element to this patch that I haven't really touched on yet, and that is that I've also got the Morphogene loaded up with the Amen break. I seem to have screwed up whatever I was doing with the patch earlier. Sounded good originally. Since I left it started to sound pretty garbled. Let's see if we can bring it back. That's a little better. So let's also throw some accents in. Send some other triggers from the C channel to one of these inputs on the QPAS here. Let's think about what else we could do to this patch. One thing I was thinking about was maybe trying to also filter these breaks because they sound kind of harsh coming out. They don't quite sit with the rest of it. Since I'm only using the left side of the QPAS, I could patch the breaks into the right side. But then it kind of gets low passed along with the bass line. So what I'm thinking actually instead is maybe I'm going to put a dummy cable in the right low pass output and take the right band pass, which will just be the breaks. Let's see what that sounds like. I'm turning up the level of the vocal a little bit. Hopefully it doesn't clip. It's a fine line here with this loud synth and this loud microphone, and I don't have anything set up to make it duck or anything like that. Also, I'm going to go ahead and turn up the radiate on the right side, because that will still be independent from the left side that's on the bass line. Byte says QMMG time. For sure, I considered using a QMMG, but because it's very well suited to acid. But we actually are making the QPAS right now. Hopefully, we'll make the QMMG again. But the QPAS can really do pretty good acid too. You just gotta massage it a little bit. I think turning down the radiate. Feeding it back into the attenuated filter input, and especially just using the mono low pass out really helps with the kind of give it that acid sound. I'm gonna clock that reverb now. How long until QPAS will be available again? ASAP, I can tell you that. I'm actually not sure the exact story on individual things on the production floor, but we're trying to get everything back in stock as fast as we can. Turn down the filter enough that we're really only hearing the percussion at this point, or even maybe only the reverb. Travarsi asks, what is patched in the right side bandpass? So I took the right side bandpass, and that is what has the breaks from the morphogene in it. So let's see. Let me turn down the everything else. This is what it sounds like. It is the amen break. It doesn't really sound like it in this context anymore. Now we can kind of hear it there. Turning down the resonance helps. Problem is, I think you really need some resonance to get that acid sound. Is that the new Rene firmware? It is. So, yeah, again, I kind of went over this briefly at first, but for anyone joining us later, this Rene firmware, when I have the trigger mode on the fun page, I'm going to turn it off so we hear what it sounds like without it. We can hear that each clock is outputting its own gate, and they're all separated from one clock to the next. When I turn trigger on, normally what that does is makes the gates even skinnier into triggers instead of following the gate width. But with this firmware, if I turn on certain pages or certain locations to be gliding, then it will tie it to the next location while also gliding to the next node if they're not the same node. So let's lets us get some kind of more groovy patterns. Would something like that also work on the filter? I might need a little more detailed cinematic motion by that. It does, if you're using it to modulate anything, pitch or otherwise, we're going to get those glides. And for example, I was using the Cartesian output on the filter. There's the Cartesian channel modulating the filter. Kind of like the sound of this without the pitch modulation, so I'm going to stick with that for a minute. Let's see. Noticing some very long glides with some weird passing, but can't recreate it yet. Well, one thing that does happen is if you basically it'll stay gliding, it'll stay tied until it reaches the next step that's not gliding. Take out this Cartesian modulation to make it easier to hear. See, I've got a bunch of locations all gliding here. Here's the pitch modulation. So if we turn on glide on all 16, it's just always going to be gate high. A couple holes in that long glide here to get more rhythm. That's the key. HP out from QPAS. So I'm curious now. Do we want to try high pass acid? That's uglier. We gotta bring the modulation back. Is Pete raving in the back? He may be raving somewhere. Yeah, there he goes. So I really like, because we're using the Morphogene, the amen breaks to the bandpass, when I've got it turned down on this high pass, you hear plenty of square wave, but you don't really hear those breaks because I'm lower than their frequency. But when we bring this up here, that's what brings in that, whatever you call it. I don't even know how to describe that sound. Honestly, I was thinking when I do this acid patch was what I was thinking before we started the office hours. I thought, let's just do some acid, see where it gets us. This got cooler than I expected, to be honest with you. Trying to get back to something more more like what we normally recognize as acid here. How could pressure points be incorporated in the dynamics of the track, especially the filter cutoff and triggering of drum sounds? You know, one thing I thought about was, let's see, using the shift channels. Oh, let me remove that comment so that we can. Using the shifting channels of the tempi to change the rhythm of the drum. So I just had a. We could take a gate to the mod. Actually, that one might be, that kind of rhythmic thing might be better to just do with something that's cycling. Okay, so Cinematic Laboratory says it suggests adding random CV to the sequence from the Wogglebug. Let's do that. I'll see if we've got a gate output we can use. Let's use that one. What if we, what can we do here? What if we use the final output? That's kind of blasphemous with the, for an acid patch, but we're here to break the rules, so. Baby asks, is there anything pressure points can do that zero control cannot? Yeah, Cinematic Laboratories got it. There are 4 touch plates that can do pressure. Well, or to put it a different way, each touch plate has its own individual pressure output. And each touch plate has its own individual gate output as well. The zero control only has a common pressure and gate output for all touch plates. Let's do a little random modulation of the right hand radiate, which is coming from that amen break that's being filtered by the bandpass. Let's use the high pass out for that. I can still barely hear it. If I'd rather just use this. You know what? I've decided that the final output, while it sounds really good in most contexts, just isn't as good for an acid patch. Actually, let's go ahead and radiate left because that's going to give us probably some sort of formant sound. Somewhere along the line here, it's pushing one of these filters down into almost like sub-audio territory. It's getting these really liquidy sounding blasts of resonance. I'm not sure that's what's happening. That's what it sounds like to me, but it's something else. Chris asks, which elements make the basis for a techno beat like this? I didn't grow up with music, kick hats, and acid bass. Yeah, probably kicks, hats, and yeah, I think that 909 snares, kicks, and hats are a big thing. We don't have those in here, so I've just whipped up a kick drum and tried to fit the amen break in. And Cinematic Laboratory makes a good point that this is probably not techno. I don't know exactly where the lines lie, but it's. I was thinking acid house. And for acid, of course, would be the Roland TB303. Says earlier we said Travarsi was using the reverb for rhythmic purposes. Can we expand on it? So what Travarsi was doing was, let's try something with just the kick for a minute here. So she was not clocking the reverb, but she was modulating the, I want to say the pre-delay and the size maybe? I'm not sure if Traversi's still in here to answer that, but I'm modulating the size with a clock and the tilt with another clock so that it's getting modulated in time with the rhythmic elements that are coming in. But it's not, its pre-delay is not actually synced to the clock, so it's sort of like it's being modulated in time while also being kind of shuffled out of time. Oh yeah, here we go. Tarasi says she was also modulating decay, and I want to say she was doing it with an LFO maybe? I'm going to do that too. Here it's almost like the reverb is like part of a drum machine here. Let's bring the bass line back in. You know, one thing I'd like to do here is use. Oh, okay, Chris, our cinematic says reverse the pre-delay. Let's hear what that sounds like. Are we getting a lot of phase cancel? I can just make this go in mono here. Does that sound better? So I was thinking I'd like to do something else with the mix of the reverb, and I'm going to pull something out real quick. I just used a mult to make my kick so that I can use also my sub output to modulate the mix. Here we go. Rosa says she kept the reverb size small as well, so I'm gonna the temptation to destroy this patch. It's usually fun to destroy a patch just to see if you can bring it back, right? By changing tempi states. That's what really happened. I think this is the one that I originally had, but I don't know for sure. Got about 10 minutes left. Does anybody have something that they would like to hear? Some patch? We could rip this apart, we could alter it. I don't think we're going to get it back to some of the dizzying heights that we had earlier, but, you know, who knows? I don't have the mic set up for that at the moment. Can we see something with DPO X lock? Notice it makes a pitch change today. Let's try that. That means I get to break this patch apart. It was fun while it lasted. If you want to see me sing into the morphogene, look up a morph chord ratios video on YouTube. We sometimes joke that X-Lock might be the least used input in the system. So to show what it does, we'll start by demonstrating how lock works between the two channels of the DPO. Now those are already set to close to a major third or an octave plus a major third or something like that. If we press lock, they're close enough now that actually lock barely did anything. Let's try setting them close to each other's exact pitch. Turn that down a little. So you notice that as they get close to each other in pitch, phase beating goes slower and slower, right? And if they're at exactly the same pitch, then there won't be any phase beating. And there's a little phase beating. If I press lock, they phase lock, and in fact, since we're listening to them both, they're almost canceling each other out. They're so perfectly actually out of phase with each other here. If we set this to say a fifth up, it just makes it easier to lock it into those ratios. And if you get close to where it's not quite ready to lock in, you can get these sort of different sounding phase. Different sounding phasing effects from what you would normally get. In theory, the idea, the reason to use this would be for an FM patch. So if you're, if you want the two to be set to, say, a ratio of in theory, that's going to make a cleaner FM when we actually, let's use linear FM. Super clean, so clean that you almost can't even hear it. So this is gonna allow you to get something a little bit closer to the like DX7 style FM where everything's tuned to a perfect ratio. And if you were to sequence, and this also, you know, considering that analog VCOs do not track exactly the same no matter how carefully they are tuned, this is going to theoretically make that not a problem. You can maintain your same ratio. Turn off some gliding here. And X-Lock, oh yeah, so Luke is asking about X-Lock. Now, X-Lock is the exact same thing, except that instead of locking VCO A to VCO B, it's locking VCO B to whatever you patch to it. So if we don't have lock engaged, we could engage it on B by patching a saw wave into it. The reason that it changes pitch a bit is that it's not a hard sync. So the sync switch, the pink, that's hard locking it to where the oscillator resets when it gets the pulse from the syncing oscillator. The phase lock, it's a phase lock loop, so it's listening over time to the phase relationship between the two oscillators, and then it's kind of nudging its own oscillator out slightly in order to attempt to match the other one in terms of how their phase relationship is over multiple oscillations. So if you hit it with something that if you hit it with, you know, a pulse or something, it is going to cause it to change pitch slightly because it's confused by this. It's listening and thinking that something else is happening, and so it's misidentifying what's coming in because it's expecting an oscillator, something that is continually sequence on the Wogglebug uses the same basic procedure, but then runs through some more circuitry. But that can be used to do some really kind of crude pitch following. If you sing into the Wogglebug, you can sort of get the an oscillator to follow the pitch of your voice, sort of. This is it's an hour. Thanks everybody for joining us today. Appreciate everybody coming back, and Happy New Year. And we will be continuing to do office hours for the foreseeable future, and hopefully have more guests on as well. So yeah, encourage everybody to stay tuned and check back in on Thursdays. Also check out Travarsi's video that we launched yesterday, called Extended Techniques with Travarsi. She was the first of several kind of guest hosts that we're going to have over the coming months on the channel. So definitely stay tuned. Somebody says, what happens if you X-lock to a sample on Morphogene? I mean, probably not much, unless it's just a sample of a droning oscillator that's close to the pitch of the oscillator of DPO VCOB, or close to a whole number ratio of its frequency. Then it's just going to cause it to. Otherwise, it's just going to cause it to like blip slightly out of pitch whenever the sample changes. So, all right. Thanks everybody. Have a good week. Have a good weekend. We'll see you next week.